Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So what are we going to be doing today? We've been going through getting more and more parts back onto this thing. You probably saw in the last video we finally got the oil pan on, kind of refinished it, got it fixed so it doesn't have the dent in it anymore. Got that mounted. So what I'm going to be doing today is getting the water pump back on. And the water pump, I bought a rebuild kit for it. It probably was brand new, taking a look at the old one that I took apart. When I pulled it apart, it looked like some very new parts. There was very little wear on it, but you know, they say to redo this thing at 120,000 miles, the water pump, the belt, or I'm sorry, every 60,000 miles, so you water pump your belts, all those different types of things. So I figured I've got it torn down, let's just go ahead and rebuild this. So what we're going to be seeing today is me tearing down the old water pump, rebuilding it, and then getting it installed onto the engine. So probably going to be a fairly short video, but you know, another important step towards getting this thing back together and ready to go. Pretty much as soon as I had pulled the engine, I knew I was going to replace the water pump, just because everything I read said to do it every 60,000 miles. Interestingly enough, when I was pulling it apart, it really looks like the water pump had been very recently replaced, but figured I would do this on the safe side, go ahead and replace it anyways. You'll notice that I'm using a plastic scraper to get all of the old gunk and gasket off. And now that the old gasket's off, I'm going to actually run the piece through our ultrasonic cleaner, get it nice and clean so it's really clean and ready to go. The ultrasonic cleaner did leave a little bit of gasket maker behind, so I went through and again cleaned that off as best as I could, and just made sure that everything was ready to reassemble this thing. I used a little bit of gasket maker in order to ensure that there wasn't any leaks when I put the gasket on there. It's very light coating so that it would just basically fill in any imperfections, and then torqued everything down per specs. So first thing I want to talk about is some prep that I had to do. So as you probably all know, I sent the block out to get it honed and finished so that I could put some new pistons in there. One of the things they did was spray paint the block after they cleaned it, but one of the things that happened was they spray painted over where the water pump gasket is going to go. So it was, you know, nicely painted, kind of like this. And I wasn't quite sure what to do, so I checked with my cousin, checked on the 3SI forum, just to sort of find out. I was pretty sure that I should probably remove the paint so that we had a nice metal surface to go to. And sure enough, a couple people on the forum replied, and my cousin did as well, and let me know that, yeah, if at all possible, we should really go through and get the paint off of there so that we have a good metal surface that we're going up against. So using a little bit of elbow grease and some paint thinner and some acetone, I was able to go through and remove the paint that was on the area where it's going to seal up. And so now we're in a pretty good position to start putting this thing together. The other thing that I found is that the gasket that came with the water pump rebuild kit, really didn't fit quite right. So, you know, here's a picture of the gasket that came with it, and I don't know how clear it is, but basically not all the holes are lining up, and it's almost like it's just slightly too small. It was at this point, as I'm looking at it, that I remembered that I had bought an entire gasket kit for this car. So I went over, found that box, opened it up, and found the gasket that came with that one. And the gasket that came in the gasket kit fits much better. You can see here in this picture just how much better the gasket really lines up. So we're going to be using not the gasket that came with the rebuild kit, but the gasket that came with my gasket kit, which lines up much better. So we're going to go ahead and use that to go ahead and put this all back together. So now I'm going to go ahead and put a very light coating of RTV gasket maker on here. The service manual does not call for this, but I watch Joe and his 3000 GTO restoration channel, which is a great channel. He's put so much information up on these cars and how to work on them. He suggests putting on a little bit of RTV around everything, just because, you know, these cars have a ton of mileage on them. The other thing is it'll also help hold it in place as I'm getting it lined up and put on the other side. And actually the one thing you'll see is that I'm going to end up putting RTV on the engine side as well. I took a look at the surface, and there's some pits and some scoring. Again, the engine's got 120,000 miles on it. Some other people have worked on it. And I want to try and keep this thing from leaking, so I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit, just a very thin coat of RTV on both sides, in the hope that that'll help seal up and fill any cracks that might be in the metal on either side. Alright, so that's going to do it for the video. The water pump is on, the detonation bracket's on, whatever this thing is right here, it's on. Everything's torqued down, so we're getting pretty close to putting the heads on, I think. There might be one more video where I put a bunch of the side brackets on. I've been going through and getting those cleaned up and repainted, so we might go ahead and put those on before we start doing the heads. I'm not quite sure yet. But we're moving right along. It's starting to look more and more like an engine every day. So with that, please make sure that you leave any comments down below. I read every one of them and appreciate the feedback. Be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you on the next video.